Hello, everybody. I think I'm gonna change that song because I spend the first 15, 30 seconds, 1 minute of like every show to just continue to dance or talk about that song. So you know what? I guess maybe it's just how that podcast and live stream is starting. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us live or watching the recording. This is episode number 5 of the DevRel show, a show where it's a mix between just two friends or two new friends talking about developer relation and talking about life, talking about our career, trying within those discussions to share some tips and tricks for people wanted to work in DevRel or just wanted to work in tech. And on top of that, because we are developer advocates, there's always like a demonstration, a demo part where we're gonna like our guest gonna demonstrate about a specific technology, an open source project, a programming language, like whatever they want to share that could make sense for a developer advocate and or developers or GitOps people or DevOps people. Just for the sake of learning new stuff, having fun while learning new stuff. So episode number 5 now, and I'm really happy to have someone I quote unquote know for a while, Dan Moore. We do not know each other, unless I'm wrong. We do not know each other in person. I don't think we know each other even that much online, but we've been connected on like Twitter, LinkedIn for a while. So Dan, first, thanks for being here and welcome to the show. So if you would like to introduce yourself to the people listening right now.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. Yeah. I do not think we've met in real life, but that the line is so blurry, right? Because you can interact with someone, and I actually just met someone today that we had a pretty extensive interaction, and we'd never met in person. So anyway, I'm Dan Moore. I'm head of FusionAuth. Head of DevRel at FusionAuth, and I've been doing software in one form or another for about 25 years, and we're just really thrilled to be here to talk about DevRel and demo kind of an identity solution. And yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So you just said that you've been in tech for 25 years, which is amazing. I don't know if you reached that point where like when I tell people I've been in tech for, I don't know, 22 years, like the younger people, they're always like, what? Like, yes, like we are that old. Sorry to include you with that, Dan. But tell me a little more about like what were those 25 years? Like, what did you do? And obviously, you're not doing DevRel for 25 years. So,
It's true.
what happened? What's your story?
Yeah, so I get started. I like to say I got started in tech because my parents had an insurance brokerage, and they needed to send out paper letters to people who were getting their insurance policies renewed. And I realized that they were basically asking me to help them, and there was a lot of copy and paste going on back then. And I realized you could do mail merge and minimize the pain, and you got a whole much more benefits by putting all those clients into a database. And so I started to do that, and that was I want to say in high school. And it just showed me how much technology can actually help alleviate the burdens of people, even back then, right? Because it was really tedious to send out hundreds of letters a year to and create them manually. Worked at a web consulting company. I've contracted for a while. I've done a couple of startups. I've been an engineering manager a couple of times. One of the startups I was a CTO at. I've taught AWS. I moved into developer relations in 2019 after I realized that being an engineering manager was not where I wanted to go, and I wanted to see where I could grow without being an engineer, but being engineer adjacent.
Yeah, I mean that's a pet peeve of mine. There is something in tech where you're a developer and engineer where it seems like the only next step is like becoming a manager, and it is not true, and it should not be true. Meaning, like it's fine if it is what you want to do, and it's perfect if you want to try it, and you try it, and it's good for you, and it's not good for you, but you know it, you tried it. But like you should have like as a company, you should have like a step ladder when like people can go from like junior to senior to principal to like any other type of leadership role that may not include managing people, because you know what, not everybody likes or is good at managing people.
Yeah,
So
I'd add 2 points. That the first is I understand it and have been part of smaller companies like 10 or 20 person companies where it's really hard to have that senior IC role. But I do think it behooves everyone to at least consider that as an option when
Yeah.
you're building a company. The second is, and I've done 2 stints as an engineering manager. I like to say that it's like it's the same as engineering, the same way that American football is the same as football, like soccer, because they vaguely are similar, right? They both have a field, they both have teams, they both have points, but like the skills, you're a novice again when you move from being an IC to an engineering manager, and you'll appreciate a lot of things that your previous managers did, but don't think that your skills translate. No matter how technical or how apt you are.
That's the best metaphor analogy that like I've heard about it. It is exactly that. Like obviously there's like part of your job that you bring to that new role, but like it's so different. Like I think the biggest part is that you're gonna work with engineers and you used to be one. So I think it's the closest relation that you have between those roles. But yeah, anyway, and I understand also, as you said, like I understand that like in some companies it's harder to like have all that ladder or the next step that is not managing people, especially in startup when you're smaller and you have like your first engineers, they're doing a great job, you want to hire more people, but like the CTO may not be able to like manage the people and like really concentrate on the technology and what's next and like the architecture and stuff like that. So you need people to manage and you're going to trust. Like you need someone that may be able to do a little bit of management but also still code a lot, so it's kind of like a hybrid role. So I understand that, but still a pet peeve of mine. It doesn't mean that like it's the next step. It should have like developers, engineers should have a next step that does not involve managing people. So with that said, you said you're already head of developer relation at FusionAuth. I'm wondering, what does that mean now, like being a head of that department? So are you managing people, or what kind of like head of developer relation are you right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think all your listeners, all your viewers should have this in mind because the title is super. Yeah, thank you, Coop. First, the title is very variable, right? Just like being a CTO in a startup. I mentioned being a CTO in a startup, and I've had friends and colleagues who have been CTOs of 500 person or 1,000 person companies. Obviously, CTO of a 2 person startup is different than CTO of a 1,000 person company. Your skills and your view and your tasks are different. Same is true with head of DevRel. Right? When I started, I was the only person doing it. Obviously, the founders were doing some work too, right? Like around DevRel specific tasks like documentation and excuse me, and speaking and things like that. As we've grown, we've hired a couple of people. We've engaged with some contractors to provide content and example applications and things like that. So I still try to keep my hands in the code, the example apps, the documentation as much as I can, and talking to users and in the community. So interacting with people on Slack or the forum or other places. But a lot of what I do now is project management, right? Like deciding what the priorities should be, helping the other folks on the team when they run into blockers or when they are confronted with multiple pieces of high priority things. How do you prioritize which, and trying to push the strategic goals of the business forward, right? And that's something that I think everybody at a company should be thinking about, but especially if you're kind of running a department, you want to make sure you connect your activities with the bigger goals of the company.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I used to now I'm back in a high C role. I don't have a team, but like the last job prior to where I am right now was also head of developer relation, and it was a little more similar to like I had one person on my team, so I was not managing a big team. She was a technical writer. Um, she was not even the developer advocate, but like she was part of developer relation. But yeah, my job was like leading developer relation, like taking the decision, defining what we're going to do next, the priority, and like mostly like everything that you've just said. So that's an interesting role. And you know what? I forgot to ask you before. I'm curious about that. What brought you from a more developer centric role or like management of engineering, CTO, like all those like more technical maybe a little less social role to like a role in developer relations. So what brought you to that kind of role?
Yeah, sure. So like I mentioned, I'd done a couple of stints as an engineering manager and had realized that that wasn't a good fit for me. I had carried a pager as a developer, and if you have to carry a pager, you got to do it. But I decided I didn't want to actually carry a pager, or I wanted to see whether I had a job, whether I could find a job where I didn't have to do so.
I understand that.
Yeah, right. Anybody who's carried a pager probably does. And so I had done some technical training in while I was doing that startup where I was the CTO, and I'd really enjoyed the technical training aspect. And I'd been blogging. I've been blogging since 2003. Not I think I've done a decent job of keeping it consistent, but I really enjoyed the writing part too. So when I was talking to a startup that had a need, I just said, "Hey, I'll take a chance on this." It's like a move that is again engineering adjacent, but not pure engineering, and it leverages some of these other things that I think I like. Right? Like I like the training, I like the writing. So let me give this career choice a try. And that was, like I said, in 2019. So I think DevRel was, if not super well established, definitely like there'd been 5 or 8 years, I guess, depending on how you kind of count it, of people building that practice. There still weren't a ton of people doing it, but it was not like I was a pioneer. I was able to follow in a lot of people's footsteps.
Yeah, yeah. Like developer relation is a thing for a while now, but it was mostly a small number of like really, really big company like Apple, which yeah, they used to have. I think they still have, but it's more like enterprise focus. So you don't really see developer advocate, but they're still the one who like kind of like created the role. But yeah, when I started in 2011, and it was at a company like Microsoft, because Microsoft was like a big company and they were starting those, like actually they had those team in like bigger countries of like specific countries focused developer relation, but like the teams were pretty young, and I was still like, it was kind of like still a new role. So that was at the beginning when they're like no startups wanted developer relation or even known what it was. And even when I started, my title was it was more popular before developer advocate. Like the title that was more popular was like technical evangelist. So nobody was knowing what I was doing, and I had to explain. People were like, "Hey, are you going to church?" And I think it's part of the reason why like the title moved from like evangelist to advocate, like for two things. One, just to be respectful for religious people, because I think the definition behind it, because of like technology is a religion sometimes. Talk to people about their preferred programming language, or like even like consumer about their phone. Like ask a iPhone user to switch to Android or the other way around. That's not going to work. So there's that kind of like religion where it's not always based on fact. But the second thing is really just evangelizing seems like you were just like pushing things to people instead of like really having a discussion and like bring that feedback to the people. But yeah, even like when you started, like it was still like a new practice. Now it's crazy. Like I have a startup where like they're fourth or fifth hire, they're looking for a developer advocate. Like they have like basically a CEO, CTO, maybe a CEO, one or two engineers, maybe a sales, and they're like, yeah, we want DevRel. I'm like, okay, that's crazy, because before that, it was not a thing.
Yeah, so many things to tease out there. One is, I think that calling it developer advocate was a good transition, because that's really what you want to be, right? You want to, I think Taylor Barnett told me once, or I saw her in a presentation she gave, that you want to be an advocate for the developers outside your company, in the company, and you want to be an advocate for the company to the outside community of developers, which I think is a great formulation of it. The other thing is, around kind of the scope, right? You talked about Microsoft and having kind of a super focused piece. And I think that there's still big companies out there where you can be a developer relations professional who just does video or just does Python. There's a lot of startups, to your point, where if you're building a developer tool, I think you realize that you need some kind of technical marketing, right? And that can be a technical marketer, a product marketer, or it can be a developer relations professional. And there's, at an early stage startup, there's definitely kind of overlap between those two roles, because at the end of the day, in early stage companies, you're just trying to get noticed, right? And so there are definitely ways to get noticed that are more developer friendly, and there are ways to get noticed that are less developer friendly. But your role is really to get noticed, and I think that's where a lot of startups. Oh, actually, I will say I think that it was super white hot for DevRel folks in like 2020 to 2022. And then I've actually talked to a couple of startups, and they're saying, well, actually, we thought we were going to do DevRel, but now we're kind of dialing back and aiming more towards a technical marketer or something like that, which I think is an interesting perspective, because sometimes startups, like all of us, just want that magic fairy dust, right? To like solve all of our problems, right? Like we just want to code and, make have someone else do all the sales, the marketing, all that stuff that is important to building a company. And I think DevRel had that kind of aura for a little while, and it's not now, which I think is great, because DevRel still has a place, and I think it's hugely important for a proper dev tool. But it's not magic fairy dust.
I love that you said that, because as I said, I've been doing DevRel for a while, and I've been in big, medium, like really big, medium, small startup and company and Fortune 500. And like I would say the biggest problem I had was mostly with startup, because it's a startup, it's the ecosystem, you need to have result right now. And I've always said that like developer relation is a medium to long term type of impact job. So because it's about people, because it's about building relationship, because it's about building trust, because it's about helping people being successful, hopefully with your product, but at the end of the day, you're there to help people, and people internally and externally. But all those things, because it's a people centric role, because let me say, it's a no bullshit role. You're not going to be successful if you bullshit your way through discussing with people, to like trying to quote unquote sell things to people. So because this is that like transparent, honest, people based role, it takes time, because it's about all that, and sometimes it doesn't work in startup. So I agree with what you said, or like it's nice that people start to understand that like it's not that fairy dust, like one trick pony, to like, hey, we're successful because we have one DevRel person. Like it takes time. So it's great that there's a good mix right now, where there's a lot of startup that say like, hey, maybe it's not the right time now, which is good, because there is nothing worse. Been there than that more than once. It's really not good when you're in a place where like, in terms of like developer relation, you're successful, but in terms of like the startup metrics and what they want to achieve now, you're not, and it's really hard to be successful. So it's good like not being in that spot, but at the same time, there's still startup that are like, yeah, we're still going to do that effort to build something, because we're not just thinking about right now, we're thinking about medium to long term. So I think that's the sweet spot right now to be in DevRel. People understand a little more the role. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think that I can tell that you're not talking hypotheticals, and that's been it's tough, right? Like, and I have sympathy for the startups too, right? Because they
Yep.
are looking for a solution when you're at the end of your runway or approaching it. You want to think about how can we bring revenue in the door, and so if anyone's thinking about joining a startup with DevRel, like make sure you understand the runway, make sure you understand, I was really lucky with FusionAuth, the founder really understood the value of DevRel, and great documentation, and we had the luxury of time. And so I think that worked out really well. I could see if I was dropped into the exact same situation, but the founder didn't have buy-in with DevRel, and the runway was shorter, then that would have been a different experience for me. And so it's not enough just to have someone who's enthusiastic about DevRel. You need to make sure again, back to kind of what we were talking about when we were running the team, you make sure that like the DevRel activities are like directly tied to the value the business is going to create. And to your point, it shouldn't be the next quarter or the next month or the next week. It should be, where do we want to be in 6 months or 12 months? Because I'll be honest with you, developers see startups come and go, right? Like, and you and I are both have been devs. Like, we understand how easy it is to be cynical about someone who comes in and is like, rah, 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 like, here's the right thing. We're going to, take over the world. And then, in a year, 3 years, whatever, they're gone. And so that's where the honesty piece, I think, comes in, right? And I've actually told people, hey, FusionAuth is not the right fit for you at this point in your application process, and come back
Love
when
it.
it is, right? Maybe leave them some educational stuff or other things like that. And having that credibility is going to matter more in the long run, but in the short run, that's a hard pill to swallow for a kind of a founder who's looking at their runway.
Yeah, credibility is so important in that role, because like not just for your job right now, like it follows you through your career, especially if you continue to do developer relation. So credibility is important, and I feel like, as you said, it's your job to tell people when it's not a good fit. And it may seem like it's a bad thing for the company, but I feel like I strongly think that it's a positive thing, because yes, at the beginning, obviously you want customer, you want users. At some point, you want customers, people who's going to pay for it. But like, if you bring people at the wrong time, especially developers, we usually give one chance and it's done. So
Yeah.
if I try your product right now, it's not answering my needs, or it's buggy, or it's not working, it's done. Like,
Or
if
you've,
if if I see you in 6 months, it's finished. It's like, I tried you, didn't work.
sure. Or if I've lied to you, right? Like, if I say, Fred, this will solve your problem, and it's very, very clearly apparent that my product doesn't actually solve your problem. I just wanted you to try my product because I was trying to hit a metric or something. Yeah, that trust is broken. And I will be, totally honest. Like, I think that's true of good salespeople too, right? Like, good salespeople will say the same thing. They'll be like, obviously they want to get to yes, they want to get the sale, but like, a good technical salesperson will say, actually,
Yeah.
you should talk to somebody else.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You touched base about something about, like, bringing values to the business, and this is some kind of like a hot topic when it comes to DevRel, meaning that, like, some people think like it's not possible, or it's really difficult to measure the business value of developer relation, or like, how do you measure your return on investment, or how do you define your metrics? I know it's a topic that, like, you are passionate about, you wanted to share a little more, so I'm all here. I want to learn a little more about you. Like, how do you think DevRel should be measured? How should we measure DevRel? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer to that question is like, how long is the string, right? Like, you need
Yeah.
to first of all talk to the business, right, and like determine. There's a great book by Carolyn Luco and somebody else where she talks about the developer like life cycle of evaluating a product, being aware of it, evaluating it, implementing it, and then like operating it. I think there's another one in there, but you need to talk to your business about where they need that, right? Like, what do you need? Um, what does the business need, right? So for me, when I joined FusionAuth, it was awareness. That was like the most important thing. And so we actually track the number of website visitors, and not just like the overall website visitors, but the visitors for the portions of the site that we we implement, right? Like, we help with like the docs, quick starts, blog posts, things like that. And it's not perfect, but if that number goes up, we can actually see, some kind of impact. Right now, tying it back to specific DevRel activities is hard. You have a lot of anecdotal
Yeah.
evidence. We've definitely had people on sales calls be like, oh yeah, I saw Dan's post on Hacker News, or I ran into Dan at a conference. But I will say, I have talked to other people or heard of other people who like track things down to like the length of time that someone watches a video. And I don't, I've never been in that kind of organization, so I don't know the benefits of that. I think that just like, I mean, the way I would say it is like, just like marketing, like there's marketing goals that are kind of fluffy, and then there's kind of like end of day goals. Um, an easy one that's an end of day goal for DevRel team would be like, if you're a traditional SaaS application, is like, how many people have signed up, right? Like, and that is, again, that's an aggregate effort, right? That's not just the DevRel team, but
It
it's
is.
something that you can like point to and be like, hey, this is something where we can move the dial, right? Because if we create tutorials, if we create example applications, if we are out in public speaking, And you can even try to like tie it to particular events, right? If you just mark in your analytics tool, this is when I spoke. But to sum up, what's that? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say to add to your point about it's like I always say that developer relation is a shared effort, meaning that like yes, I'm the one responsible or my team or like the people in the department or whatever you call that. Like yes, we're the owner, we are the responsible of like all the developer relation activities or what you do, like I don't know, video speaking at conferences, running the docs, doing tutorial, those kind of things, day-to-day stuff. But in the end, it's really a business effort, meaning that like every time someone talk to a potential user or customers, they're doing developer relation. Every time that you share a link to the documentation, you're a salesperson, you're in a sales call, and hey, you know what, there's that documentation that is helpful, and you share that link to a potential customer and an actual customer, or even better, you bring me feedback about the docs because when you were talking to that customer, it was like, hey, I did not understood that part, and you bring that feedback to me so I can improve the documentation. It's developer relation. So I firmly believe that I say a lot of like strong opinion in that show, but like I firmly believe that like it's impossible for a developer advocate to be successful without like a company slash team effort. Like if you're the only one doing that, it's not going to work. Like it's really a company effort.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a salesperson or a marketing person where they were responsible for everything, right? Like from the initial sale to the implementation of the product. Like you can do
Yeah.
it, right? There are solo founders out there who do that, but it is not an easy road. It is a long road, and it's hard. And even when I was the only developer relations professional on the FusionAuth team, like I said, the founders helped out. We had contractors who helped write content, and there are ways to be a solo DevRel without being the only person helping push things forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of solo DevRel, so that's another topic that you wanted to talk about. And for people watching the show, uh, we do not rehearse the show. It's really like just a flow, like a normal discussion. But when I have like a really intense form that people need to sign up to be in the show because I ask them a lot of questions, and there is one where it's just like, hey, is there also like some talking point that you would like to bring in the discussion, if that makes sense, if it's natural out of it? And solo DevRel was one of it. So this one I didn't ask you before, but like I'm not sure. Do you wanted to talk about like being the only developer relation person in a company, or like being some kind of like freelance around developer relation? Because both are interesting to me.
Sure. Yeah, I can't say I have experience being a freelance contract software developer, but I don't have experience being a freelance DevRel person. I'm sure you and I can think of people that we would want to bring on and do that kind of thing to have that conversation. But for me, I think being a solo DevRel, even if you have like contractors to help or founders to help, you have a kind of a particular set of challenges that I think it's worthwhile to go find a community. Right, there are DevRels like to congregate, so there are a number of different communities out there, and I think finding one where you can bounce ideas off, where someone says, "Hey, can you do this?" and you can say to the community, like if someone internally at a company says, "Hey, can you do activity X?" you can go to the community and say, "Hey," especially if you're new in your career, your DevRel career, like I was, you could say, "Does this make sense?" Right, or how would you actually think about approaching this task? So that'd be my first thing for the solo DevRel. And then the second thing would be just taking advantage. If your company has money, they may not have money to hire a second DevRel, but they probably have some money to like do some technical documentation or some technical like blog posts or things like that. And that can help you create more buzz or output or content without you having to work, twice as hard.
Yeah, because that job, I don't get me wrong, I love doing developer relation, being a developer advocate, but it's like I don't know, 20 jobs in one. So when you're the only one at a company, especially well, like in the startup, when you're the first person to do that, and obviously like the team before started to do something, like you started to work on the docs a little bit. They may have done a video or two, but like you still have like to define what is developer relation at a company. You still need to like put the basis and the foundation that like what is the minimum needed things just to be a successful company when it comes to DevRel. Sometimes like you have, yeah, like there's a lot on your plate. So I come back to a little bit of what you said about like, like trying to get like outside resources, but also trying to find internal resources. And I know everybody has a lot on their plate, but I always approach this with what's in for them. So what could be the benefit for them to helping me, because it's life is business. Like even if they're nice people, at some point like it needs to bring value to them. So I go back to the salesperson example that I was talking before, where like the benefit of like bring the feedback to me about like the documentation, some stuff missing in the documentation, some stuff that are not clear, or even telling me like a question you often have, that will give me the opportunity to maybe create a tutorials about that question you often get, or to update the documentation, which means that like instead of spending like 30 minutes on the phone, or on the, like not on the phone anymore, but like on the Zoom call to like help your customer, you can have like that one link to rule them all when you send that tutorial, and it saves you some time. So yes, that's going to give you a little more time to give me feedback and bring that stuff to me, but at the end that's going to help me, and wow, that's going to help you too. So trying to find that approach about like what's in for them,
Yeah.
it's what I try. So it's a little bit sneaky, but it's working well so far. So good.
I, I love that idea, right? Because one of the things I've observed about DevRel is they tend to kind of float between different departments, right? Like they're talking to product, they're talking to sales, they're talking to marketing, they're talking to customer service, and having that kind of mindset of how can I help you help me help you is means that everybody wins. And by the way, the salesperson doesn't just save time; the customer probably gets a better answer, right? Because they will actually have like a full-fledged tutorial rather than the salesperson or the technical salesperson
Yeah,
trying to like solve a problem kind of on the fly. And technical salespeople are at various levels of expertise around the product,
awesome.
whereas the documentation is going to be kind of top notch and one and done.
Yeah, awesome. um maybe one last question that I wanted to discuss with you before we move to the demo, because I'm excited about demo also. um you know uh, like what's from your point of view, you've been doing that for a while now. What's like the best thing about developer relation from your point of view, in terms of like not the activity itself, but like for you as a job? And because I'm that kind of person, like what's the not so good thing about that role from your point of view, again, has an employee, has someone doing that job?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the best thing about DevRel is the sheer variety of tasks that you have, right? And I think I've been a software engineer, and you can have variety of tasks as a software engineer too, but you tend to be kind of focused. Whereas DevRel, I can and have in one day talk to a customer, write a piece of documentation, debug an app, and add a GitHub action. And I like that. I will say the flip side of that, and my answer to what's the worst part of that is that same thing, right? Like you can feel like you're pushing in 100 different directions at one time, and so it can be hard to be like, okay, I'm going to block out this time, and I'm going to really push this example app forward or this blog post forward. So yeah, that's my answer. And I mean, I think if any of your listeners or viewers are considering DevRel, you know, there's no rule that you have to jump into a full-time job. Like you can start to do some of
Mhm.
these activities right out the gate, and then look back over your career and say like, did I like variety, or did I like really diving deep? And I think you can be a developer with both those options. It's just a different size of organization that you're probably going to be in if you really like to dive deep
Yep.
on one
Yep.
particular thing versus spread out.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like that I started DevRel, where I was starting on my own personal time. I was starting to write blog posts. I started to speak at conferences. I started to organize meetup, but I was doing that really just for fun, because like I like to share with people. I like to help people. Always been like that. And I was like, that's awesome because I need to talk to more people than like the other like small developers team that I had at the time that I work with. Like I'm a people person, I'm an extrovert, I'm a social person. So there was like all those things were like perfect for me. But something that I tried, which didn't work, but like work in most cases, like trying to bring that also at the company, saying like, hey, you know what? Like maybe I could like code maybe 1 hour less per week, but like spend that time to write a tutorial about, the latest feature that I implemented. So I know the best. I created that feature and write a blog post about that. And it didn't work in my case because we're doing like technical tutorial around our technology, and there were like complicated, so it take a little more time to write those, and we're a small team. And it was like when I tried that, it was like, I don't know, 16, 17 years ago, where like DevRel was not a thing, blogging was a thing-ish, but not really. Like company, we're not blogging that much. So my boss was like, yeah, we're just losing time. It's too much time to have like a good quality blog article, technical blog tutorial. So it didn't work. But like, trust me, right now, it doesn't mean it's going to work for your company, but like that's also a good avenue to just like try to put your feet like 1 foot in the water and see like if you like that and still bring value to the business. So it may
Yeah.
not be possible in a small team or a small company, but that's a way to get started without doing that on your free time, and it may work. And other tips is like just technology, you have a specific expertise, propose to do something that won't even take your workload from like other stuff to doing that. It's just like proposing to do like how do you call that, like a lunch brown bag or a learning lunch, where you're just like, hey, you know what, like I would like to share about that specific learning piece or expertise that I have with the rest of the team. I'm going to do this during lunchtime. You're going to prepare this during your own time, but you're still going to have an audience that hopefully is going to be friendly and receptive, and it's a good way to maybe start to like share about your knowledge, but also start to do like public speaking if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just put one quick plug. I
Yeah.
help run the Boulder Ruby meetup in Colorado, USA, and we are almost always looking for speakers. And you can zoom in, and you can do like a 5-minute talk, or you can do a 35-minute talk. And I know that other meetups are in that same boat, right? Like they're always looking for interesting content. And that doesn't mean you can come to the Boulder Ruby meetup and like say, I'm going to demo a .NET application. But if you say, I'm going to talk about energy management, or I'm going to talk about machine learning, and there's like a slight Ruby component or a Ruby component, we will be interested. So that's another great way to like very low effort,
That is.
take that brown bag lunch presentation and do it for a meetup.
Yeah, no, that is super great advice. And as you said, every meetups are in that same situation because most of them run like once a month. And like you need new speaker, you need new content, you need new faces. And like many people that want to start speaking, they want to go to the conference first. It's way harder to get accepted at conferences. It's a lot easier at meetup. And to be honest, sometimes the quality is even nicer at the meetups because like those are friendly people. You get those faces that like go every month, and like you're usually between friends, and it's just nice. So and again, you have the possibility to like speak between like a smaller amount of time to a longer amount of time. Usually those are free too, so you don't have the pressure like, hey, people pay like $500 to go to the conference. So like if you screw it up, it's a little less bad. So yeah, this is a good way to start. And thanks for proposing. So people that have Ruby expertise, please look it up. So on those beautiful words that we just shared, I would like to know more about your company because, to be honest, you're doing some awareness right now. I don't know FusionAuth that much, so I want to learn more about what it is and see some cool tech stuff.
Yeah. So I'll give you the 30-second overview. Basically, FusionAuth is an architectural component, a server that you snap into your application that helps you provide authentication and authorization. A lot of people know Auth0 or Cognito if you're in the AWS world, similar to that. We have some differences, but this is not a pitch, so I'm not gonna pitch you on that. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
You know what? On that show, it's like you pitch as much as you want because I've been DevRel a long time, and nobody wants you to pitch your product. But at the end of the day, like this is what you need to do a little bit to be successful. You need to create awareness, talk to people, and as long as it's a product that is useful for people, I'm super happy about that.
Okay.
So on that note, I stop talking and I give you the stand, my friend.
Okay. Great. So you can see my screen.
Yep.
Great.
Everything's
So
good.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically, I've started out with one of these quick starts. We have about 20 of these in different languages that show how to snap FusionAuth into your Django, Spring, Laravel, etc. application. And I'm going to augment that. And I'm going to, as Fred mentioned in the announcement, excuse me, I'm going to add Magic Links support to it. So the first thing we're going to do, I've checked out this GitHub repo because they're all out on GitHub, and I'm going to spin up FusionAuth using Docker and something we call Quick Start. And so this is going to run for a fair while. And this is Kickstart is basically a way to configure FusionAuth to a certain known state. Like you can set up users, you can set up applications, you can set up all kinds of other interesting pieces. And that's what's happening right here, right? Basically, we're just calling in a bunch of these APIs and setting things up the way we want to have them set up. Also, as I mentioned, like you're never going to use FusionAuth by itself. You're always going to use it as part of an existing application. So I happen to have this quick start includes the complete Rails application. So I'm going to just run this, which basically just starts up Rails. And then I'm going to kind of switch over to here and go localhost.
That's a great thing that you provide an application, because one of the things that, and it's a real strong personal opinion that I think some company fails, is that when you have a product and there is no easy way for me to test it. And when I say easy, I say easy and quick, because I'm a developer. I can create stuff, I can build stuff, but right now what I need to do is test your product to see like if it fits my needs. So it doesn't need to be something complicated. It can be like a kind of like hello world, but like give me a way to test your product quickly, and you're doing that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. Yeah, so these example apps, like I said, we've got a number of them for different languages. They all play off of the change bank thing, which is I should have sent you the video. It's a Saturday Night Live video where it's a bank that just makes change. They don't do anything else. So we can log in here and so here I have an account balance. I can make change. You know, what's the change for 87 cents? You can do 17 nickels and 2 pennies. So that is kind of the base application. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add magic links. So magic links, what they do is localhost. So I stood up. It's a dev focused like SMTP server, which just has this HTTP interface. So you can send email to this, and it'll just pop up here. So it's perfect
Super
for local. What's that?
It's super useful.
Yeah, mail catcher is what it's called. I don't know, but maybe I need to make that a little bigger. So so we're gonna configure that in FusionAuth, but I'm gonna switch back to here. So FusionAuth has an admin interface that we're gonna see here. And the reason why I logged in with a separate browser is because it actually like it's the admin interface is itself an application inside FusionAuth. We have two applications here. This example app, which is the Rails app, and then the FusionAuth admin UI. But we actually have people who have like 10,000 applications, because you can kind of manage all your applications in one place, which is where an identity provider like FusionAuth, like some of the other ones that I mentioned earlier, can help you, right? You have one central place to normalize your user data and your access data. So like I said, we're going to add magic links, which a magic link, in case your viewers don't know, is a way to log in, but you're not using a username and password or another set of credentials. You're logging in because you got a link or a code sent to your email address or to your texted to you. So we're going to enable that for our application, the ChangeBank application. So the first thing we need to do is set up an email. So wordless login, and we're just going to log do change bank with just a click. And we have an HTML template and a text template. You can localize these. We're not going to do that today, but there's support for a bunch of different languages. And obviously, if you're in the market in Canada, for instance, you might want to do an English and a French translation, and then whatever the user has actually set up for their profile, you can send them the right email.
Awesome.
So I'm going to just over here, So PB Copy is a really amazing tool that lets you copy stuff to the clipboard. So this is just out of the docs. I'm not doing anything special here. And you'll obviously want to customize this if you were to use this.
I've seen some templating, so I assume in the docs you have the information about like what you can use in the template.
Yeah, which variable. This happens to be FreeMarker, which is kind of an old school templating system, but similar to Mustache or something like that, where it's like you got variables, you can do some logic, right? Like this is doing like a for, basically a for each loop on a variable.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks.
So, yep, no worries. So we've created this now. Now we need to set up the excuse me. Now we need to set up the actual email system. So FusionAuth has this concept of tenants, where tenants are basically separate spaces of users and applications. So it's really great for a SaaS application. You can have, again, we have people running thousands of tenants, and each tenant is totally separate. So you can have the same user with the same email address in different tenants. It really works well if you're going to private label something, but we're just going to stick with one here, and we're going to go ahead and do mail catcher, and it's port 1025, and let's just send the test email, make sure that's set up correctly. So here we are, we got the test, so that's good. And then we're gonna, down here, we need to configure the passwordless login. We call it passwordless. It's really a magic link. We click save. And then the only other thing you need to do to turn on magic link applications is you edit it at the application level, and it's under the security tab. And again, all of this can be driven by an API call or a client library that is in PHP or Java or Ruby or Python or JavaScript, but I'm just going to manually do it now. I click passwordless login, I click save, and now
everything is done in the interface.
Well, I'm doing everything in the interface. If I was going to do this in production, I'd probably use Terraform or one of those client libraries. But
okay, yes. Cool.
Yes.
Cool. So you have a Terraform provider?
We do. It's community supported right now, but we do have one. Yep.
Awesome. I love that. Big fan of or like infrastructure as code. A little less of Terraform with the recent news, but
yeah.
Or
do you like Pulumi then, or what's your other option?
Actually, no. I said it wrong. Meaning, like, I'm a little less a fan of like HashiCorp. I still really love Terraform, and actually, Terraform is the technology we use at KubeFirst within our platform. So I love Terraform. I love infrastructure as code. I know a little less Pulumi. I used it like years ago, but like Terraform kind of like became the de facto technology for people doing like IAC.
Right.
So still love the technology, but yeah, I was not super excited about the news and the license change.
That's a whole separate discussion about like open source business models and things like that. I have understanding and empathy for both sides, right? Like, but we should probably save that for
exactly. Like, yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. It's a tough problem. So we've enabled this, and now we have a login with magic link button here. Sorry, it's a little small. I was messing around with the CSS, but if I go here, I can type in this, and I click send, and it sends it. It's going to say that same message whether that user exists or not. But we can see over here, we actually got this, right, which is the template that we had sent. You can also see the plain text version. But if we click on this, we are now logged in, right? We have richardexample.com. We can make change. Is, one of the fundamental value propositions of a solution like FusionAuth is that you get the ability to like add on all these different authentication options with just configuration as opposed to writing any code. Yeah, so I could stop here. I did have a stretch goal of showing login with Google if we want to do that. But I'll let you decide since you're the host.
Yeah, actually, let's do that because I really love, I'm a big fan of any technology that helps developer. And please bear with me, but like focus on what they do best or the things that is a little more exciting. And I'm sure the people on the engineering team at FusionAuth, they love what they're doing. But to me, like doing the logging stuff as a developer is not the thing that get me the most excited. So like if I can use a product that's going to help me to do that with either a couple of clicks or like some like TF files and Terraform files, or even using the CLI, like something that makes me do that part really quickly so I can focus on like the rest of the business logic. Wow, like I'm a fan. So yeah, I would like to, if you want to,
Yeah,
if you have time, would
yeah,
love
I
to
got
see
time.
how you can do that because as we've seen, it's pretty fast. So I
Yeah,
assume that's going to be another like quick demo, and voila, we're going to have like Google support, like
yeah,
SSO.
I'll do that real quick. So here we would just we go to identity providers, and there's a number that FusionAuth supports. Some of these you have to pay for, but Google is free. So let me just I got these. And I did probably less practice on this. So
That's fine. We're all friends here.
I'll rotate that client secret. And then Google has these magic incantations about scopes, which are right here. So we will paste that in. And I'm not going to customize the button or anything. I'm going to enable the Google Identity Provider for this application. I hit save. And it should be configured. So I'm just going to click login with Google.
Oh.
So, and I forgot to log out. Here, let me go to, I created a test.
Yeah, you're already logged in.
So yeah, so that's one of the benefits. But if we go sign out, so if I go, I'm going to log out here. And let's just log in again. Choose Danmore test 9.
That's a good way to not display password when you do demo. I like that. I use PB copy for everything, but that's a good thing. That's a good trick.
So here we are. So we're logged in. And if we go back and look at
that's crazy because when you proposed to demo that part, I was like, hey, that's fine. It's going to be another 10 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, 30 seconds. Actually, it took 1 minute because you had to log out twice, like from Google verification. I was like, that was fast. Awesome. I love that.
I mean, to be fair, just, so your viewers aren't kind of deceived. I had previously done a lot of setup in the Google side, right? Like you need to set up an application and set the correct.
That's complicated part, but
we have documentation about it. But you do it once
because of you. It's not your product. It's like Google. Like when you need to use Google as a third-party service, you need to enable the API and like put the quota and all those things. I don't know if it's the same for SSO connection, but using it IDC provider. But every time I need to do something, the Google API console is my enemy.
It's so tough. Yeah, I mean, again, respect to them because they make a lot of stuff available in one place. But yeah, it is complicated and it is confusing.
It is.
So yeah, so that is. And again, I just want to emphasize to your viewers, like, I just demoed FusionAuth, and I think FusionAuth is a great solution. There are other identity providers out there that will give you the exact same benefit or similar benefits in terms of isolating your user data. And the way kind of the high level pitch for the entire class of solutions is you would not, unless you were in a really specialized case, you would not have all of your data in your application co-located with the application. You'd move it out to a relational database. We think the same thing is true of your user data. You have significant benefits in terms of user experience, security, and user data integrity if you move the user data out to an identity provider like FusionAuth. So cool. Am I good to stop doing the demo?
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Andy Cranston said cool concealment of your password there.
Thank you, Andy.
And I'm going to do something that I don't usually do live, but I check quickly. Andy shared his own project about setting password in Windows, Unix, Linux environment variable,
Awesome.
and keep the password hidden. So it's on GitHub. It seems legit. So use at your own risk, because I didn't try it. I usually wouldn't share something like that, but it seems interesting. And yeah, so that's awesome. So thanks a lot for your time, Dan. That was a really nice discussion. It's nice to talk with someone who has experience in tech, experience in DevRel, to share your point of view. That was a really great discussion. Great demo. Folks, if you want to get in touch with Dan, you can do this on Twitter. You can do this, I assume, on LinkedIn, because he told me I could share his LinkedIn URL. I guess you're the same kind of person of me, where I'm like, hey, if you work in tech, let's connect. I mean, like, I'm that kind of person. So connect with me on LinkedIn. If you work in tech, I'm more than happy.
My only piece of advice would be about that is send a note. If you click to someone on LinkedIn and say, like, hey, I saw you on Fred's show, or I met you at whatever, because that's going to help me understand the context in which I know you. But yeah, love to connect with people.
Exactly. And there's a third place where you can connect. It's the blue, how do you call that? The blue hat?
Sky.
Blue Sky. Yeah. I forget about that. Like, I create an account like everybody. Do you use it?
I have done a little bit of that. It makes me appreciate Twitter's algorithm more, because all it is reverse. Mostly it's reverse chronological, and it's just hard. But I use it some. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I tried it at the beginning, but like it was really hard for me to kind of like start over again, like all the effort that I put in Twitter. As much as like I don't use Twitter that much as I used to. Like, I was using Twitter like a maniac, like personally, professionally. Now I mostly use it professionally, so I'm there a lot less. But I try Blue Sky when it started, because that was supposed to be like the savior, like the new Twitter, with everything that Helmo was still doing to Twitter, or should I call X? But it's like any other social media. I created an account, and I have an account there. I have probably 4 tweets or whatever the code is there, and that's kind of done. So, hey, Andy, again, say, I should have shared thanks, Fred, but also thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
So again, thanks for the show. Go check FusionAuth. If you have any question about what Dan shared, or how to use a product, don't talk to me. I don't know the product. Talk to Dan. He's going to be more than happy to help you.
Sounds good.
It's his job. With that said, thanks again for being on the show. Great discussion, great demo. And hopefully we're going to have the chance to meet each other in person at some point at one conference. Like, I travel a lot less where I am right now, so I do a lot less conferences. I have less opportunities to meet people in person, but hopefully in the near future, that's going to be something possible. And before I let people go, 2 things. Thanks again to your sponsor, CubeFirst, which happened to be my employer. They're sponsoring that live stream. So thanks for letting me do that. And Dan, any last word, last bits of wisdom for people?
Sure. I would say, just like we need more people to be software developers, we need more people to do developer relations. So if you have an interest in it, reach out to me. Happy to answer questions. Fred obviously is a tremendous resource, but we need all different kinds of experiences and all different kinds of expertise levels. So come on in. The water's fine.
I agree with that. That's a good. I love when I'm just like, ask any one last piece of advice, and like, yes, I'm gonna give you like the best piece of advice that you ever had. Like, I'm like, that's also. It was ready for the question, and you did not even know it was coming. So again, thanks for your time. That was a pleasure, everyone. You've been a little bit quiet today, so feel free to, if you have any comment following up the show, had them on YouTube, and if there's like specific thing for Dan, I will follow up with him for the question. With that said, I really need to take notes about like who's my next guest so I can announce them. Like, and I always forget like who's going to be the next guest on my show. But what I can say is that it's going to happen in 2 weeks. So join us in 2 weeks. It's probably going to be Thursday at 3 p.m. Like I'm trying to do. The only time where it's not at 3 p.m. is because my guest is like in a real far away time zone from that, and it's way too late or too early. So on that note, thanks again, Dan. Thanks
Thank you.
everybody who joined us. Thanks everybody who's watching the show, and see you in about 2 weeks. Oh, and just before that, because one last comment that just arrived. This is Vlad from Fitbit from Prevent. Oh, Vlad. So maybe one of the Vlad I know. I used to work at Fitbit. Thanks for. Oh, nice seeing you again, Fred. So yeah, I assume it's one of the Vlad that I know. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks for being here, and thanks again, everyone. And that time, it's right. That's the end of the show. So see you in 2 weeks, everybody.